Hello and welcome to our next edition of the Cybersecurity podcasting that we're doing here. My name is Brian Powell. I am the network department manager here at PCA Technology Group, and I'm also an ethical hacker as well.
And I'm Dr. Erickson Nealens. I am a professor as well as neuroscience specialist, being able to provide insight into the brain methodology and how it is that understanding neuroscience and psychology can help us better understand how people are sometimes the weakest link as it relates to cybersecurity. And so today we have a really exciting presentation as it relates to then email phishing. And so maybe, Brian, can you share a little bit about what exactly is email phishing?
So if you joined us for our last podcast, we talked a lot about social engineering, and the one thing that you definitely need to be aware of is that email is an extremely high attack vector used in social engineering. So out of the social engineering attacks that happen out there, email is probably used 90% of the time as that attack vector. So you can see how successful this attack vector is, and the reason why they do it. And there's a variety of different ways that this can be done. There's what's called phishing attacks, and basically that's just sending an email out to a suspected person or entities and hoping they take the bait. That's really what it comes down to. And then there's more targeted ones called spearfishing. That's more targeted towards mid-level company entities like HR people and things like that. And then there's also another form that's called whaling. And that as the name sounds, that's going after the big fish, targeted towards the big fish like CEOs and C-level entities and things of that nature. So,
it's always interesting every time that you speak about this, the terms as vectors, and it sounds so much like it really is. It is an attack, right? And these are different weapons that hackers have in their arsenal to really gain access to the organization. And I think as you're saying that, to me, that really almost captures how important really, the cybersecurity safety measures are. Because, really thinking of them as these different weapons that they can use is, I think to me, kind of puts the big concept of how vulnerable, each of us can be and how important it is that we're following these practices. So you mentioned about then these different almost ammunitions, right? So kind of like the buckshot almost of just general phishing and hoping one of them sticks. Hoping here sounds awful, but I guess on the bad guy side, right, that's kind of their mantra. Spear phishing, being the actual slug itself and hoping that I get an accurate shot towards this person. And then you got the missile strike, this big ammunition, right, for the whales themselves here. So take me through, is there specific messaging, that they will tend to use in each of these different attacks that could give an indication to people listening that may suggest, what type of attack is being used?
Yeah. So, like you mentioned with phishing, it is more of a buckshot type thing. Think of it as, in the real world of phishing, think of it as just throwing a net in the water and waiting a few hours and then pulling that net back up out of the water and just kind of figuring out what you got in the net. That's kind of what, the global phishing buckshot version of this actually is. And it could be a variety of different messaging. It could be as simple as sending out a message saying, "Oh, hey, your password's expired, and you need to click on this link to go to the site and modify your password." And what happens is a lot of times those links aren't really pointing towards the correct site. They're pointing to a site that looks like the correct site, but it's designed to basically entice you to enter your credentials because you think you're on the right site. So you put your username and your password in there, and you usually get some kind of an error message that says the login isn't correct or something. And what that actually did was actually record what you wrote. That site was set up by the bad guys intentionally to steal your credentials, and you basically typed them in there thinking you were on the right site. So that's one way of doing things. And with right now, actually, something that they're really trying to do and this kind of borderlines with the spearfishing thing, but they're pretending to be HR. So it looks like the message is coming from somebody's HR representative within the company, and they send it out to the employees. Basically, it's a COVID-19 questionnaire form. And it basically sends, again, there's a link in there, and they think it's coming from their HR company, and it's asking questions about their vaccination status and things like that, which obviously, a lot of companies right now are big into that and making sure that mandates are being followed or any restrictions and things like that. But again, that it takes them to a form that they have to fill out, but before they get to fill that form out, it asks them for their email credentials. And it's basically acting like you have to log in to fill out this form, and you do, and it brings up that form, but what it did is it actually sent that information to the bad guys again. So again, you inadvertently gave up your username and password thinking you're filling out a form that was requested by your HR, and it really wasn't. So those are some of the common buckshot ones that are out there right now.
It's incredible, though. It does speak a lot about the human science to it. As you're speaking, it almost reminded me like it's a marketing campaign that the hackers are trying to use to see, okay, well, what's going to get the most attention? And we know from a neuroscience psychology perspective that there's only so much attention that we as people have available at any moment of the day. And marketing is really a way to capture and sustain your attention so that you're spending it on that source and not paying attention to something else, right? So some companies will invest a lot of money in their marketing to be able then to play in this war on your attention and capturing it. And what's fascinating here is that you're saying that with this phishing campaign, these hackers are then trying to identify something that is meaningful and relevant to their audience effectively. And it's so weird to think of it that way, but I guess that's probably the best way to frame it. Because if it's something now that's relevant to me, well, I'm paying attention to it. So that means I opened that email, I start reading through it, and then from last time, as you mentioned, if it goes into kind of our filing cabinet, into something that says, oh yeah, I can trust this, or it looks like something that this is legitimate, then I'm going to follow the instructions here. And especially it sounds like if it's coming from this type of perceived authoritative figure, like HR or my boss or CEO, yeah, I'm going to follow and obey, right, the command that's in here, the instruction that's in here. And that's natural, right? That's something that we as people are naturally inclined to do. You can go back all the way to Stanley Milgram, there we go, if I can speak here, and the, following perceived authority findings, that go all the way back decades ago. And it's incredible to see that then the hackers are using these techniques to be able to gain entry into the different accounts that people have that they own, and then from back-end channels probably have access to a wide variety of different pieces of information here. So you're kind of almost allowing, through this email, this phishing technique, opening the door for an intruder to be able to see everything on your end, on the back end, and really gain entry into the whole organization. So when you talked about then the spearfishing, these kind of targeted messages, in your world, is there anything that you're seeing that seems to be more likely to be opened or to get someone's attention?
Yeah, so just to comment on one thing that you mentioned there while you were speaking is that you brought up the fact that this is almost like a marketing campaign, and it is. It actually is. And in fact, it has a lot of traits to a marketing campaign. In fact, they even track whether the message was opened or not with hidden images, with some embedded code, just like the marketing people do. They use the exact same techniques that, oh, you know what, this email was open. Oh, you know what, this link was clicked. I mean, they use all kinds of tracking to see how far the person actually goes, so they can now tweak their attack methods to entice you to go even further. So it's interesting that, it is very similar to marketing, and some of the platforms might even be marketing platforms in the background that they're using to track all this stuff. But they're using it for ill intent, unfortunately, instead of the intent it was initially designed for. So.
Yeah, so I mean that certainly speaks to the impact, right? The efficacy that these attacks can have, right? I think we're all aware of the impact that advertising and marketing can have on organizations and different products. So if they're using the same techniques then to gain entry into organizations, it's something that's all around us all the time.
It is, yeah, and ultimately, we mention this a lot, and in my presentations, I mention this all the time, and you kind of alluded to it in the beginning too, that you could have excellent security measures in place to try to stop this, whether it's spam filters, whether it's policies, and whatever, but ultimately the buck stops with what we call is the human firewall, and that's the end user. All it takes is for somebody to click on one of these things inadvertently, and if they don't report it, that they clicked on this, or notify somebody that they clicked on this, they could have very well opened the entire back door for bad guys to be in their systems without them even realizing it. So it's definitely something that, if you do inadvertently click on one of these or find yourself that you fell victim to one of these, definitely report it. And let your IT provider know, because they can at least quickly reverse anything or possibly stop anything from happening further the faster they know about it, versus waiting and being worried that you're going to get in trouble because I fell for this. It's very easy to fall for it, honestly. It really is. So it's not an embarrassment or a shame or anything. It's just you got to let somebody know that it did happen.
So encouraging individuals to say to their IT department or whatever their provider is that I clicked on this and I'm not sure if it was something that was malicious. Because it sounds like, that's kind of where my next questions go. There's a lot of things that are working against employees, right? The hackers are then trying to create messages that are meaningful and capture our attention. They're playing on the potential authority figure role to get us to follow the instructions in this email. What are your recommendations for employees then to help either avoid these phishing campaigns, and if they do fall prey to it, what should they do?
Well, the first thing, if you go back to the spearfishing example, you asked what are we seeing with that. Just real quickly to touch on that. From a spearfishing side, they usually target payroll people, HR people, or someone in that department. And what we see a lot of is direct deposit information modifications or requests that are done via email. So what they do is they pretend like they're one of the employees of the company. They reach out to the payroll or the HR person within the company saying, hey, I want to change my direct deposit information. Here's the new information. Can you make it done immediately? And basically what happens is if the company doesn't have the proper policies and procedures in place and they just blindly follow that email request, what happens is they end up sending a payroll check for an employee to a bank account that was opened with probably stolen identity, and as soon as that money hits that account as a deposit, it gets emptied out and that account gets closed and the bad guy is gone with the wind. So to stop that and to stop a lot of this stuff, especially when it involves any type of wire transfers or any type of payment card purchases or gift card purchases or anything like that, you follow up verbally or physically with the person requesting it. Don't just blindly think that the email is valid. That goes back to, okay, well, what happens if this is a whaling attempt and they're pretending to be my CEO and my CEO is asking me to go out and get this? Well, there's a lot of fear in people, depending on how you deal with pressure and stuff. And you could talk better to this, but there might be a fear of, oh my gosh, I can't question my CEO. He's asking me to go out and buy these gift cards for him because he needs them for a client. I can't question that. I'm going to get fired. You know what? If there's a CEO out there that's going to get upset with you double checking with him verbally and explain to him that, hey, I'm doing what's in the best interest of the company or whatever, I don't think any CEO is going to get upset with that if you make that kind of initiative to make sure and double check that request is actually coming from the person that is claiming to be on the other side of that email.
Yeah, and I mean, on my side, I understand that there is, in fact, a lot of hesitancy to bring that type of message higher up to CEO, to a supervisor. And I think it does speak to anyone who's listening on here the importance of, as you mentioned, about psychological safety. Having a company and a culture where people feel that they can come forward with information and feel comfortable that they're not going to be reprimanded. They're not going to be punished for bringing forward that information. So I think there's multiple layers here that likely can help to facilitate effective cybersecurity. And, is the organization willing to invest in that psychological safety type training? And it is certainly something that is near and dear to my heart. It's one that's really important in being able to acknowledge the emotions as well as how to build a psychologically safe culture because of exactly what you shared. A person may have mistakenly clicked on that email, and now owns up to doing so. But if I don't feel comfortable with now having made that mistake, it could be days, weeks, months, years before that then comes to light, and that's an eternity probably for a hacker to be able to gain all the information that they have needed. So it sounds very much like at the end of the day, even though humans in the organization, people, employees can be the weakest link, it also seems like they can have the greatest impact to be able to prevent the significance of these different attack measures. And if employees are cognizant and paying attention to the message, questioning it, it seems. But then if mistakes are made, being able to then go to IT, to their supervisor, and express those concerns, it might be able then to mitigate the impact that these different attacks have.
That's correct. Yeah. So, that's obviously the idea behind these podcasts is just to bring awareness out there, because that's one part of that arsenal or one part of the tool set in the end user's tool belt to hopefully prevent these type of attacks ultimately from occurring. And if the end users don't realize what tactics they're using, then they won't know what to look for. I always say question everything. And if it looks too good to be true, or you're getting emails out of the blue saying certain things, instead of clicking on those embedded links, open up a browser yourself and go to that site by typing it in yourself. That way you know for the fact you are getting to the correct website that email is supposedly coming from. You're not falling for some type of link that is sending you to a fake site at that point. But if you're one of PCA's clients, you get an email that looks suspicious, instead of opening it up or clicking on anything, give her a help desk a call. It'll take a few minutes for us to quickly just remote in and take a quick look at it. It's always better safe than sorry. And if something does look suspicious, it probably is suspicious. And that's the best advice we can give, is just be very, very cautious of opening emails blindly. Just assuming that they are in fact correct, when sometimes they're not, and they're malicious in fact. So
great, and thank you so much for the info, Brian. So I always learn so much from these and what the different techniques and tactics are. And what I think is really great about these series is that it's now giving the people listening to this the tools to be able then to improve their cybersecurity and understanding why these are things that can really help protect them. So thank you for being able to share your thoughts here today, and look forward to being able to talk about more of them soon.
Thank you for your input too, and we'll chat again soon. Thanks.